Welcome to Adapted, the show where we discuss adaptations of various forms. My name is Tom, and with me is...
Pat.
I want to start this week by mentioning something we probably should have covered last week, which is the death of Carl David af Versen.
Oh, he died! Yay!
Oh
I mean,
my God.
I know
What a
he's been
start.
long dead, but good Lord, the man picks some bad
Yeah,
writers.
he did. So he dies in 1912. This week we're covering 1913's Nobel Prize.
Huh, that's a shock.
Yeah,
First,
he doesn't seem to have much to do, if anything, to do with the 1912 Nobel Prize, even though he was the chairman of the committee until 1912. His follow-up was Hans Hildebrand, who actually wrote the committee speech for
Miterlink? It was a Miterlink. No, it
no,
was
last week was Hauptmann.
Hauptmann, yeah.
Yeah, so Hildebrand wrote the speech for Hauptmann, which I didn't find particularly interesting. I don't think we quoted it at all
No,
last
we didn't
week.
talk about it, I don't think.
But he was just the pro tempore for 1912 for that remainder. Um, However, we are now in 1913, starting in the age of Harold Hjärne. That is Hjarne.
Gosh, that's gonna be hard.
Yeah, we audience at some point should learn how to pronounce it.
Just these
But
names, but you want to
yeah,
correct us? Someone correct us.
please correct us if you are listening, and thank you for listening. He would remain the chair until 1921. So the next few years, even though we are missing a Nobel Prize in 1918 and 1914, I think those are the 2 years that are absent because of World War One. We do see a substantial amount of work. It's not quite as long as Versen, but I would like to attempt to consider the differences between the 1901 to 1912 era and the 1913 to 1921 era and see if there is a distinct shift in the committee's obligations, or no, I shouldn't say obligations,
Emphasis, I would say.
emphasis and preferences.
Well, if this particular week is any indication, this dude is off to a good start.
He is off to a good start, and this is the first person to win the prize under his chairmanship, and that is Rabindranath Tagore. And it is a remarkably good book. I think it's
Yeah.
very much in the vein of more modern literature.
I said
And
if you took this book, if you put this book, if you told me that this was written by as I like the latest graduate from the Iowa State Workshop, I would say, yeah, that seems very reasonable. If you told me this was a finalist for the Man Booker Prize, I'd be like, yep, totally believe that. It could have been written yesterday. It's
mhm,
very fresh, very
yeah,
fresh.
it is very fresh. And Tagore
For a
is,
sorry, one last thing. For a translation, at least the translation I read, was done in 1915.
yeah.
That's even more of the miracle. Like sometimes you get these works that the translations are so stale, but actually the works are okay. You know, something like the Constance Garnets of the world. But this thing was translated contemporaneously and is again, the translation is perfect. It's spot on. I don't know how accurate it is with the Indian, but it is spot on. It's really good translation.
Yeah, I believe it's his nephew who did the translation. So it's all in family. Yeah. And Tagore is an interesting guy. The Tagore family dates back to about the year 800. They trace their lineage in India to there. And his grandfather was a major industrialist who made a ton of money. He had dinner with Queen Victoria. He was a very, very successful man. And his father, the industrialist's son, became a major religious figure. And so Tagore was from a family that was pretty accomplished. His sister was the first published novelist in India and the first woman to edit a magazine. His brother was a very successful mathematician. It reminds me a little bit of the Wittgenstein family. If anybody knows the Wittgenstein family, there's a similar.
That dude that wrote the book that you try to get me to read that's impossible to read.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
It's that dude.
yeah, it's that one person that came up for us. But the
I couldn't read it. What is the book? It's
the Tractatus Philosophicus,
yeah, it's
the
impossible.
Tractatus by yeah, the Tractatus Logicus Philosophicus by Vic. I think that's 1921. But anyway, the so Tagore comes from this kind of established family, and he first published at the age of 13. He published a collection of verse. And he soon after traveled to England. He fell in love with a lot of their music, and he wrote early on his first opera, The Genius of Valmiki, which combined both Western and Indian songs, kind of Western or English drinking songs, and something similar in India, sort of elevating lower class stuff into opera, but also combining West and East. So this priority of his was sort of baked into his family. In 1901, he completed his collected works, excuse me, that came out, and that made him very famous in India. And he had a ton of works by that point. Um, at that point, his father had established a large land trust, and Tagore went there and established a home and a place for meditation, and eventually built a school based upon the classical Indian model of education. He wanted to kind of move away from the schoolhouse model of things. He sold the copyrights to all of these books in order to fund the school and lived there for a while. While there, soon after, both his wife and daughter died. And a few years after that, his son died. And so it was a place that ended up being very successful, the school, but also a tragic place for him. In 1903, the British general Curzon broke apart Bengali. Bengali is the area in India where Tagore is from, and they broke it into West and East Bengali, the British did. One for Hindus, one for Muslims. Now, apparently, Curzon said this was just to make it easier to manage. It was just a very large area.
It
And
wasn't.
yeah, the reality seems to be, at least this is what people believe, and there seems to be some evidence of it, that this was there to prevent a sort of unity between Hindu and Muslims in protesting England and British occupation. However, the partition was the thing that led to the protest, and Tagore became even more famous participating in it. He composed many patriotic songs, and he would often stand at the head of marches singing those patriotic songs. This became the Swadeshi movement, which we know Mahatma Gandhi would later join in about 1920 and become famous for that. However, this movement soon became terroristic and a lot of violence erupted. This made Tagore incredibly uncomfortable, and he publicly broke with the movement for this reason. We also have in 1912, he traveled to England to promote an English translation of his poems titled Git Jolly, which was immensely successful after a strong review given by William Butler Yeats.
Did you read that?
That poem collection, I
Yeah,
did
did you read the
not.
poem collection? It's
Did
pretty
you?
good. Yeah, I
Oh,
got it.
okay.
It's pretty good.
Oh,
I mean, it's an easy read. It's not, it's a relatively short poem collection. Yates's introduction is really interesting. Um,
what does he say about it?
it's a little bit of like, I mean, I don't know what the term would be, but like Indiophile.
Hmm.
He's a little bit of like, they're so great, they're more in touch with everything than we are, and this, so he sort of
Yeah,
has this,
it's
it's a
sort
little
of
bit of that.
Orientalism.
Yeah, it's sort of an Orientalism. But his basic point is we know nothing about this guy, and if you were to, he's got a few points. He basically says, firstly, I love this poetry book. He says it's like with the best thing I've read. It's so spiritually, sort of intuitive, and it's just a wonderful book. And he says I find myself I can't read it in public because I keep finding myself weeping, or I have to like hide my face because I'm so emotionally attached to it. And he's like, it is very simple verse, but it's moving. Like it is a good
Mhm.
collection of poetry. But his point is, which I think is fascinating, is he's like, if I read some random poet, from the 18th century or 19th century, and I wanted to know more about them, I would go to my local library, and there would be books. Like no matter who it is, there would be books. If I wanted to know about anyone, I could find something and I could read about them and research them. And he goes, there is nothing in English about this dude. So if I want to know anything, he goes, I actually have had to go to my any friends I know from India, and I've started asking them, being like, "Do you know this guy?" And he goes, and all of them are like, "Everybody knows who he is." And
Mhm.
he goes, "We know nothing about him." So he goes, "I've in order to get information about who he is and what else he's done, he's like, I've had to ask people." And he goes on and basically praises him and about his work and who he is and what he's done, and it's very much an effusive praise from Yeats,
Yeah. Okay. I would
and it's
like
good. I
to.
mean, that's I'm not a it's kind of it's not formal poetry, meaning it doesn't have form. I think it does in its original language. At least Yeats says it does. But it's not an informal translation, so it's less appealing to me. I like formal verse, but it's still a good it's a good prose-ish translation.
Is it on topics of, is it sort of what we saw in the book, which is the topics of the everyday people type thing?
Yeah, it's very, again, it's a very spiritually meditative, I would say.
Hmm.
It's very much in that vein. I wish I forgot to bring it. But it's very the water is wonderful and it nurtures us, and I see God in its mirror. Like that, it's that sort
Hmm.
of like, obviously that's terrible. It's that sort of thing, and the sky is infinite and the universe is, I see God in the universe as I peer into its depths. And it's that sort of very deep, I can see why Yeats would like it. Yeats sort of kind of goes down that road. And so it
Yeah,
has
he's
this,
a bit of a mystic. Yeah.
yeah, it's very mystical. That's a good phrase for it. It's very mystical. So no, I mean, I guess it is. That is in this there is a certain level of very well written prose in this novel, but it's not political, not that I noticed.
The poetry book, you mean?
The poetry book is not
Hmm.
political that I noticed. No, the book is book is
Yeah.
political. I
Hmm.
noticed that.
Yeah. No, it's just I was just clarifying.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Um,
sorry. No, but the poetry is good.
mhm.
But apparently it was like wildly popular.
Mhm. Well, it was wildly popular, I suppose, in England too, because he got a
Got him
Nobel
the Nobel
Prize the
Prize.
year after.
Yeah, that's supposedly why he won it, was that book of poetry.
Yeah, and then 2 years later, he was knighted. So it
Yeah,
was a good time for Mr.
that's a good
Tagore.
good translation. He was smart to push that one.
Yeah, he was. And in 1918, he donated his Nobel Prize money to building a new university, which was also successful and also attended by Mr. Satyajit Ray later on. So in 1918, the Rowlatt Act allowed people who were suspected of sedition to be arrested and imprisoned without trial in India. And so they started arresting people without trial. And this was sort of what inspired Gandhi and allowed Gandhi to make his fame. And Tagore and Gandhi were friends, but had really, really big differences when it came to political methods. Tagore was far more moderate than Gandhi. So though they were friends, they had a pretty public split about how you actually deal with political problems. However, Tagore did, after the um, Amritsar massacre, which is where a few protesters, peaceful protesters, were gunned down by the British. He then returned his knighthood in 1919 after that massacre. And this also heightened his celebrity. Um, at this time, he also started to raise money for his school. He went across the world. He became much more of an international celebrity. He seemed to be very good at cultivating his celebrity in order to get money for his education project. He seemed very aware of his personality and that he can cultivate that to do something. His school attracted not just Indians, but many people from England who came to the school to learn, and several of them became teachers as well. In his last travel, excuse me, he went to both Oxford and Soviet Russia. He delivered a lecture titled The Religion of Man in these different places. During this tour at age 70, he also started to display his artwork, which looked very Paul McCartney of him, but that's what he did to raise some money there. On his 80th birthday, back at home, he delivered his last address, The Crisis of Civilization. This was in 1941. He mentioned losing faith in Europe during this time because of the rise of the Second World War and was waiting a rebirth of culture. He would die on August 7th of that year, and that was his final written work. And so that brings us to this work here, The Home and the World. All right, so let's probably start with a little bit of plot. The political background of this is something the reader of this novel was probably familiar with. The author Tagore does not go into any real detail about the specifics of the movement. He doesn't seem to need to, right?
No, I mean
It's sort
no,
of
I would agree.
assumed you know what's
It's an
going on.
assumed knowledge. Yeah, I mean
Mhm.
I mean I did take a course in Indian history in college, so I did
Oh,
have at least a little bit of background on it. Um, but it's yeah, he assumes. I think the closest equivalent as I was reading it, I think, and this isn't it's not a one for one analogy, but it would be like somebody referencing like the Black Panthers or something. Everyone would know. They would be like, oh yeah, I know what that is. Like I don't think anybody today who is reading novels would be like, I don't know who that group is. It's sort of a they would understand the reference. They would get it. So I think, it's again, it's not actually that's not what they are, but it's a reference to a political movement that would be fairly well known, I think, to the reader, to the targeted reader.
and it's about this, what we mentioned before, the partition of Bengali into West and East, and the sort of nationalist movement that arose out of that, which basically looked to promote Indian only goods and establish a rejection of anything that came from England or Britain or wherever else, even if that stuff was cheaper and of better quality. There's a sort of national fervor that's going on. That's assumed knowledge. It's not assumed knowledge in the movie. The movie goes through great length to do it. And the book then follows three characters through three separate first person narratives, which is fun.
It's handled very well
It's
too.
handled
Initially, when
very
I
well.
not knowing what it was, having zero idea what it was about when I started reading it, I thought it was going to be closer to something like a like As I Lay Dying, where you were just going to get character after character after character. And this one kind of it's the three kind of swapping their narratives back and forth, but it's handled very well, and it creates good dramatic irony where you know what one character's thinking versus another, and he does make that work very cleverly, and he creates very good voices for them. You know when one's talking versus another, which is difficult. That's a difficult ventriloquist act sometimes to pull off, and he does it admirably.
Yeah, he does. And we should say who those characters are. There's Bimala, who is the wife of the other character, Nikhil, and Bimala is very young and experienced, and this is the first time she's let out of her house really since she's been married. There's a sort of um I guess would you think of as a more liberal position on the part of her husband. Her husband owns or is the immediate manager, I wasn't sure which, of a very large market in the area. I think he's just the manager of it because
Well, I
they're
think he owns the land. I think he owns. I think they call him the Maharaja. I think he owns all the land. He's like he's the land holder. But and on his land there is a market where
people are renting.
his peasants can go to, because they're the peasants that live on his land, can go to sell and buy their goods. So I'm not so he does own
But
it and
there
he
is a
manages it technically.
master. He does have a master who he's referring to a lot. And I'm not entirely sure what the employment relationship is with.
Oh, I thought the master was it's his teacher.
Oh, is
I
it the
thought that was
teacher?
I
Okay.
thought that's a reference to he calls him his master because it's his teacher. So
Ah,
it's a
that makes
respect,
sense.
not a
Respect thing. Yeah,
authoritative.
absolutely. Okay, that makes sense to me. And then, of course, there's the third character, Sandeep, who is a political revolutionary. He is leading this sort of Indian nationalist movement that is looking to, you might call them acts of terrorism. They're not in the book, but basically
They're yeah.
they're more or less that, right? He's looking to Um,
Their acts of economic terror,
yeah,
really.
burn down anything that has foreign goods in it, sink any boat that's shipping in foreign goods. And his sort of method is he kind of buys people out. Like he'll sink your boat, but if you agree to not ship foreign goods, he'll buy it back. He'll give you the money for the thing he's destroyed back. And that requires him to get his hands on a lot of capital. And he is an old university friend of our main character. And when they're together, he starts to seduce Bimala, who is very, very intrigued by this man, who is given a sort of great charisma by Tagore. He seems to be the he seems to be a Gandhi type. I know he's not actually based on Gandhi because Gandhi came along a little later than this book, but he has that kind of charisma and good looks and all
He's
that.
got a Kennedy feel.
Yeah, he
Yeah, not in his
does.
politics, but in his as a politician, he strikes you as he attracts people because he is attractive, and therefore people they follow him partially for that reason.
Mm, yeah, yeah.
Or
He's
maybe like an
charismatic.
again, yeah, I was gonna say, or like an Obama kind of
Mhm.
character. He's supposedly a very good speaker. People see him, they're inspired by him, they want to follow him. There's a certain level of yeah, charisma associated with him. But he's that kind of politician.
Yeah, yeah, and that becomes the struggle in which you see it in the title too. The home and the world is this home space that he's sort of invading. And by the end, he's
He is
invading it pretty
invading it.
much.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
is.
he
Yeah.
they don't want him there anymore. And he is, and he's also turning Bimala from her husband towards him, but he's doing it for geopolitical reasons.
Well, he says he is.
Yeah, he says he is. He seems to possibly be doing it for self-aggrandizement
Yeah, I think
and comfort, really.
yeah, it's a clever. I thought when I again, as I was reading it, what I thought it was going to be was just that again, not knowing where the political stuff was going. I thought it was just going to be a sort of the family is a microcosm of the world, and so it was just going to sort of stay within the family in this love triangle. But it doesn't. The love triangle actually informs the political moves that Sandeep makes. But there is, I think, a strong element that this guy, that it is meant to be a parallel, that Sandeep is seducing the nation to do what he wants them to do in the same way that he's seducing the wife to do what he wants them to do. And in reality, he just wants to sleep with them. He just, he wants control over them. He
Mostly.
wants power over them. He
Mhm.
wants, he wants his own self gratification, I think is the implication here. But he speaks so well and he sounds so good that all these people are willing to follow him. And it's only, and you get a parallel situation where she eventually sort of figures this out. And so does the sort of fourth major, well, I guess there's other characters, but the other sort of, he's much bigger role in the book, I would argue, than in the movie, but I don't know how you pronounce his name, Amulya, who's supposed to be this sort of young boy who's politically following Sandeep, and he eventually also sort of realizes, wait a minute, this guy is just in it for himself. He's just out to get whatever he can get, and he's just using the people in this cause to get himself power and money and control. So I think there is a it's playing, but it's not that simple. Like he's playing these concepts very well off of one another, and they're sort of well buried in there that it's not as if you just kind of, it's not like the you'd be doing this in like an eighth grade junior high English class and be like popping out with an idea and like setting it next to the other idea and be like, look, these are the same thing. They're all playing with one another in a fairly clever way. But I think that's what he is doing. He is sort of making it that this political figure is sort of invading a family life in the same way that he's invading a political life, and he's causing destruction in both aspects for his own means and gains.
Yeah, and one of the differences, and we'll get to the film, when we get to the film, we'll see. But one thing I thought was very interesting, very early on in the book, you're given right away information that this man, Sadiq, is appetite. He is going to take what he needs, what he says for his country. The deception might be that it's not always for his country, it's for his comfort. And he does make a point of, well, leaders need to travel first class everywhere because you need to be comfortable so that you can have the energy to promote these ideas. But there's a sort of, to use the Nietzschean term, a Dionysic aspect to him, like a Bacchanalian aspect.
Yeah.
Like he likes appetite. He doesn't believe in inherent goodness. He just thinks whatever you can take to do what you need to do is what's considered good. You might
Yeah,
say
he's
the
very
back.
much that. Yeah, he's very much a will to power, which I'm
Mhm,
assuming this guy was educated in the West to some extent. He's probably read his Nietzsche, so he's probably aware of that concept. And yes, I would say this guy is, and he says it very bluntly, like
mhm,
you take what you get in life is what you take. Nothing is given to you, and anything that's given in you can be taken away by someone else. So what you get, you take.
mhm.
That's it.
Yeah. The backstop might be his nation. What you take, you need to take for your nation. And he does make this point that, that what people have is owed to their nation. That what the main landowner has, it's the nation's, and this man is just kind of holding on to it. So there might be something of a universal ethic, or at least an ethic greater than will to power,
Well, he
that
says that. Again,
Deep.
I'm not totally certain I buy it. And I think that is part of the point here. I don't think that this you're meant to think this guy is a swindler. Like I don't think he's not Harold. Is it Harold Hill? Is he the uh who's
Oh,
the one from Music Man?
yeah.
He's is it Harold Hill?
I don't remember.
I can't
I don't
remember.
think I've
It's
ever
like the
seen Music Man.
I saw it once when I was in like 12, like 12 years old. But it's the the he's not the shyster coming into town trying to like, swindle people out of their money. I think I think you're meant to think he does believe that he's telling the truth, but he's not. He's lying to himself as well. I do think the implication here is that he says this, that it's, no, this is for the good of the country, but then he conflates himself with the country. So if it's for the good of the country, it's for his own good because he's the one who's going to, that's why he travels first class. That is for the good of the country. Him traveling first class is for the good of the country.
Mhm.
And that's the implication here is he's confused himself or conflated himself with the country. And so anything that he acquires, it has to be for his own good. Yeah, I think you even see that in the book when he sinks one of the ships. He sinks the ship and basically he sinks and finds out that the guy is not going to just accept an apology or accept this kind of thing. He's going to go turn them in. And his immediate concern is like, I have to get money. I have to save myself. I can't, nothing can happen to me. I am the movement. I am the country. I am this thing. He's that's how he sees everything. It's not that he needs this to save the country. It's I need to save myself. I have to, and he does that a lot. Where I feel like what is good for it's what's good for General Motors is good for the USA. What's good for Sandeep is good for India. That's his approach to political life, and that leads him to significant abuses.
And what's interesting about that as well is Nikhil, the other half of the other third of this trinity, the husband, the landowner, the guy whose wife is being seduced away. His objections to Sandeep are not, I think, just grounded in a recognition of the fact that he's greedy, that Sandeep is greedy. He authentically does not agree with the tactics and the things Sandeep says about himself, the thing that Sandeep argues for, that this will to power. Basically, he says there shouldn't be a will to power. That is not something you can ground an ethic in, and ultimately it will fail. Ultimately, this just destroys itself. And that I thought was interesting as well was that the political conversation between those two was never dishonest because the point of objection was never something.
No, it was never about what he was doing with the money or what
Mhm,
he was doing. I think Nikhil knows that. He just doesn't argue it. He
mhm,
knows that that's a character flaw, not a political flaw.
mhm. Yeah, that there's a yeah, that kind of charisma has its danger to it. And it's sort of independent of the danger of the movement itself.
And he does say, to be clear as well, that he doesn't, it's not that he doesn't support the movement per se, because he does say he himself tried to do that. He tried to open, I think they talk about it in the movie too, he tried to open a soap factory. He tried to open multiple factories that would produce only India only goods. But he essentially says, A, we didn't do it very well, and what we did was expensive, and so no one bought it. And he says, this is his fundamental argument, and this is why it seems very, I think it's meant to elicit audience sympathy or reader sympathy, is that his primary argument against it is if you just boycott all the foreign goods and you burn them all and you won't let anyone sell them, the people it actually hurts are the poor. The poor people are the ones who have to buy sugar and salt and cloth. And if you force them to buy it at elevated prices, they just simply won't be able to. The people who are making these claims are mostly wealthy or middle class. It's relatively easy for them to switch out their expendable income and for the sake of a lark and for the sake of what they see as a political joyride to boycott all of these things and spend a little bit of extra money. For the people who are really going to have to bear the cost of it, they are not in favor of this. And so he's saying you shouldn't force if they want to, they will do it. And if they don't, you shouldn't force them. You're forcing them and basically costing them their livelihoods. And that's his primary argument against it. And that's a fairly sympathetic argument. You either have to say, well, the poor have to just suffer and deal with it for the sake of the country, or you have to side with them and say, well, no, the country comes first and the people are just going to have to suffer. Um, so you have to kind of pick which side you're going to go with here.
Yeah, that is lovely bit of writing in it.
Yeah.
That he really sympathizes that this kind of aggressive progressive movement is actually kind of hurting the poor people, and they probably would not, the people who are advocating for this India First production probably wouldn't are not recognizing that who you're hurting is the lowest among us. So this is in fact kind of an elitist thing to do. It's something that you have to have disposable income to be able to do. The film underlines this more, I
Yeah,
think.
the film hits these points much more
Yeah, I mean,
clearly.
almost with a solid hammer, it does. It's a little more subtle here, and in the book, it's also they're far more concerned. I think the author Tagore is far more concerned with the internal stories of these characters, especially Queen Bee, right? His
Yeah.
wife, who is not particularly interested in the inherent contradiction of this political
No.
movement. She is interested, and this is another element that works really well here. She is interested in negotiating this kind of desire to submit that she has with the new freedom her husband is giving her. And that is kind of so Nikhil, there's a sort of idea of it seems to be this is a cultural difference that I don't fully understand, but it seems to be wives at this time were somewhat cloistered in their husbands' homes. And we see this with Bimal and with her brother's sister-in-law, her sister-in-law, whose
Her
husband
brother
has,
her Nikhil's brother's wife,
yeah,
Nikhil's sister-in-law.
yeah, his sister-in-law, his brother died, and they had come together. She had moved into the house when Nikhil was 9, I
Yeah,
think.
it
And
was
so,
when he's a child, yeah.
yeah, so
And
they're,
she was a child too, is the implication. She was
yeah,
quite young.
she was very young, and they were basically brother and sister in terms of how they were raised. And she's sort of okay with being closer. She's still there. That seems to be a tradition is, well, your husband died, you are still here. And there's a lot of tension between her and the wife. And she seems to have no interest whatsoever in any kind of advancement. And the wife herself constantly talks about touching the dust of her husband's feet, which is a sort of sign of respect as well as submission. But the husband, Nikhil, is always sending her out, saying, I want to give you the freedom to do what you want to do. And in a lot of ways, this book is about someone doing stuff with the freedom she's now given.
Yeah.
And it's not always very good. The main action she does is robbing her husband of what, 5,000 units of money. I can't remember
Rupees.
rupees, is it? Okay.
It's
5,000
rupees.
rupees to give to
Well,
this man who's
and not only stealing it, but then stupidly trying to return it in the wrong
Mhm.
currency
Yeah.
by selling her jewels and sending Amulia, this boy who's supposed to be a younger boy who they treat each other like brother and sister, sending him off with her jewels to go sell them in Calcutta, and then realizing, wait a minute, that's really stupid. Everyone's just going to think he stole the jewels. Then, she's in a panic. She doesn't, there is a certain element here, and then and then he ends up robbing the local treasury in order to pay them back, and then she messes it up pretty royally. And I think there's an implication here of it's like a child sort of first discovering politics, and there's sort of like, wait a minute, there's more. I can be a part of something bigger, and you see that a lot. We've seen that a lot in recent movements on campuses. Like it's still a thing today. And Dostoevsky was writing about it in The Devils, The Possessed, and The Devils, however you want to translate it. Before this, there's this idea of younger individuals, and she's not necessarily young age-wise, but she's young maturity-wise because she's never seen or talked to anyone really, except for a small handful of people. And when she's exposed to the sort of bigger world, she's it's like a match in a dynamite factory. She has no idea what she's doing, and she starts just lighting off fires everywhere. So that's and it's great. It's a great sort of experience to watch that character just bumble in and out and realize that her actions have consequences, and it's a very interesting read to follow her character's arc.
And she's also highly intelligent. She's
Yes, she
very
should be clear on that.
articulate.
She's very smart.
She's not a dummy who can't think for herself. She is dealing with an issue she's just simply not prepared to deal
Well, she's
with.
extremely intelligent, but she's never made choices where her choices had consequences. Right? Her entire life up to this point has been decided for her. Her marriage was decided for her. Every person she speaks to is decided for her. Her most complicated decisions she makes in the beginning are which jewels and which dresses to wear. Her choices have no real consequences. Once she's let loose, as intelligent as she is and as capable and articulate as she is, which she is, when she makes a choice, it has real life or death consequences. She's never had that before. And there is a certain element of childhood that happens to a child where suddenly they never thought that what they did really mattered, and suddenly it does, and it has significant and tragic consequences. So that's a fascinating development to see this is different from like Holden Caulfield just moaning and complaining about his. This is a articulate, intelligent adult who's coming to this sort of realization about what they're doing, and so it's much more interesting to see that person understanding this than to see, I don't know, S.E. Hinton tried to describe it. There's a certain level of maturity that's there in the ability to communicate.
Yeah, it's a sort of separation between intelligence and wisdom,
Yeah.
right? She hasn't acquired wisdom because wisdom is somewhat beaten in by experience, but she is highly intelligent and is able to she's almost deceptive in a lot of ways. I thought the book was not going to frame this idea of the theft as that as you described it, as this kind of bumbling, oh crap, I gotta put the genie back in the bottle, and
Oh,
then
and I just
you
love when
know
she tries to put the dollar bills back where there were gold coins. I'm like, what are you doing? Why are you bothering? Like, what are you doing? It's clearly, again, it's like, and my kids do this kind of thing where you go back and I'm like, okay, you clearly ate the frosting because you put the cap back on, but you pulled the aluminum foil off. Like I can see that we can see what you did. There's no point in trying to pretend you didn't. I can see it. So there's this sort of element of, yeah, it just turns into, it just keeps cascading. She just makes more and more mistakes.
Yeah, and I didn't see that coming at the beginning because it's really a captivating character. She's not somebody who you think would lose her head so completely. I think the book is just it's so cautiously written in that way. It doesn't really it doesn't really tip its hand very much. I think maybe Sadeep is an exception. I think Sadeep is
Sandeep?
Sandeep,
Sandeep.
Sandip.
Yeah, Sandeep.
Sandeep. I think Sandeep is an exception in that, and I this is maybe a little bit of a flaw, I think, in the book. I know he's gonna be a bastard.
Oh
I know,
yeah.
yeah, right? There's like you're happy in the end that he returns everything. Right in the end, he does have a bit of a I wouldn't call it a redemption moment, but
Uh,
he does not do the thing that the guy at the beginning of the book would have done, the version of him
I'm
that
not sure about that. I think he returns. I think the implication is he returns. Again, he doesn't want to, he's basically doesn't want to be beholden to anybody. He wants power over individuals. He doesn't want individuals to have power over him. So he'd gotten the money, he'd gotten what he wanted anyway. So now he can sort of magnanimously return the gold coins and the jewels and sort of be like, I didn't do anything. Like that's sort of his
Mhm.
statements there. So yes, he could have taken the gold and the jewels and the cash that he got and run off with all of it. But I think the implication is he got the cash that he wanted and he'll just get more in the next place he goes to. But now he can leave and basically be like, I'm a good guy. Like that I feel like is the implication that that's what he's doing when he leaves. I don't think it's with any actual remorse or sense of
Maybe not, but the idea that you have to be a good guy is a difference between who he was at the beginning. That's the problem. Like he has no idea of goodness. Like he thinks that's silly. And so even this idea of
yeah.
returning it for what other reason would he do it other than, the good graces or something like that.
I would have to go back and really look at the text. If I had to, just based on my understanding of the character, is he's still lying. He still does, and he doesn't even know it. He does actually believe in right and wrong and good things. He just lies to get what he wants, and he doesn't want to feel beholden, so he lies again and just gets what he wants. So because that makes him feel better. It's just like it's whatever he wants. You're right. There is a difference there, but I would be really curious to see you'd have to go back. Again, this is why it's a good book. You have to kind of there's layers here. I think you could argue he does it because he lies again. And I'd really be interested to go back to the text and see whether that's there, but this is why it's a good book because
Yeah.
all of I think you'd really have to pay attention to it. But there's a lot of layers. It's not just this thing bad, this thing good,
It's not schematic.
girl caught between. It's not that. It's not schematic. There's no obvious thing here. I mean, the Nikhil character, as admirable as many of the things he says, is pure dishwater half the time. I mean he's noble in the sense of what sort of, he accepts responsibility for everything he does, but it's like, dude, kick the man out of your house.
Yeah.
And it's not surprising he doesn't. I'm not waiting. I'm not saying this is unbelievable. This guy would never at this point anybody would have kicked this Sandeep guy out of his house. He would never have left him here this long. It's like, no, I could absolutely believe that this character was, and I know people who are like that. But it's like, good Lord, man, grow a pair and get going. And he keeps saying all these things that often you agree with, but you're just going, it's the worst. This is but what I something I wanted to talk about, which I love, is this book called Problems of Dostoevsky's Poetics by Bakhtin. And he's a Russian formalist, I'm pretty sure, in the 1920s. And one of his ideas of talking about Dostoevsky is how Dostoevsky often works is he takes ideas, literal ideas, and he embodies them in a character, and then those ideas will actually talk to one another. So it's the ideas themselves. He's actually putting sort of debates in his book by having different representations of things talk to one another. But one of the things that happens with this is that oftentimes things he disagrees with, he puts in the mouths of his best characters, and he puts things he does agree with in the mouths of his worst characters. And it's not you're not meant to be able to tell which is which. This isn't quite as layered as that. it's pretty obvious, I think, what you're supposed to agree with versus not. But he's not just making his character who says the things you're probably supposed to agree with be the sort of champion standing there like, I'm trying to think of like what the equivalent would be, but he's not just this misunderstood genius standing there spouting his wisdom and being misunderstood. This man can barely he's a good debater, but he just doesn't act. So he never gets anything done. And so you're not meant to admire him per se, and you are meant to admire Sandeep to a certain extent, even if you don't necessarily agree with how he does things. So you're not there's no straw man here. He's not just setting someone up just to take them down.
Yeah, there's something important about charisma. Charisma can get things done. It's somewhat dangerous that it can, and that charisma is not a product of a certain ethical disposition or inherent rightness. It's like good looks. It just
Sophistry. I mean, this
lands on
is this
somebody.
is this is a return of the argument of sophistry,
Hmm.
right? This is the same argument's been occurring for 2,500 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
2,700 or whatever,
Whatever.
2,300 depending on the count.
Yeah. But yeah, that's a good point. That it's the and he just doesn't the husband doesn't have it. And part of it is he just doesn't necessarily assert himself as much. And this is something that's different in the movie. In the movie, he is far more active. Um, but he also doesn't, yeah, but you're right. He at a certain point needs to tell this man, you need to
You need to go.
you need to go, you need to like stay away from my wife, and stay away from my marketplace and all that. His I guess I'm going to use the term liberalism. I think his liberalism is also not prepared for reality. He wants to give his wife this independence because he thinks it's good in and of itself, but he hasn't prepared her for it, right?
No,
You could
no,
say
okay,
that's
okay.
paternalistic, but well, you're in a paternalistic society. You have to sort of work with the ingredients you have in your kitchen. And I think that's the same thing. He invites Sandeep into his house because they were friends and he is an important person and a lot of things he is saying are correct. He seems to agree with the essential idea, the probably the
He
ideals
agrees with
behind
the
them.
idea. He doesn't
Yeah,
agree with the method
yeah,
mostly. I mean, he agrees
exactly.
that yes, it would be a very good thing if the country, I say our country, it's not our, well, whatever.
Mhm.
If the country produced all of its own goods, that would
But
be a
it can't.
good thing. But it can't.
Mhm.
It is incapable of doing that,
Or if
right?
you knock down the partition. But this is not a method to do that. We should protest the partition, protest colonialism, but you can't do it in this way.
Or,
And
we can try to get people to buy their own goods, but you have to get them to actually agree to not buy them. You can't burn their stuff and sink their ships and beat, there's a number of which the movie gets a little bit of where there's like the poor old lady who gets hit with a rock, but there's not a lot of they beat some of them. They just steal their stuff and beat them is the implication here. And, he's saying that's not going to work. That's not going to lead to a stable future.
but he's also powerless to do anything,
Yes.
right? And it's also it he is also one of the people I imagine who earlier in his life um paved the roads for this type of
Yeah.
behavior. He probably encouraged a lot of this type of thing without being reflexive enough to realize it wouldn't work at a time when that kind of reflection would have been far more valuable. And I think this is where the to reference the title, the home and the world kind of collide because it's the same thing with his wife. Okay, we are taking you out of cloister. You are going to be part of the world. You're going to be a free thinker and all that. But it's a little late to do that, which kind of sounds bad, but whatever. I mean, in reality, it turns out to be a
Well, this
problem.
is I think to your point, I think your argument about wisdom is a good argument that this is a person through no fault of her own who lacks virtues because she has never needed to practice them. She is very well educated, but she lacks wisdom. She's very sympathetic towards people, but she lacks prudence. She's not practicing these things because she's never really needed to make decisions of her own, and that's really what virtues are based on. So it's not just a question of filling people's heads with ideas. They have to have virtues in order to act not just on education, but on a whole. wealth of experiences that inform a whole individual. And she doesn't have that, and he hasn't, and no one else has put her in a position where she could do that.
Yeah. Yeah. The difference between intelligence and wisdom is wisdom has to be embodied. It's
Yeah,
a thing you have to, it's not
you have to do
a
it.
state of reflection. It's an action or a continuation of actions that become habit.
Yeah,
Wisdom becomes the habit of a well-lived life.
yeah.
And I would say by the end of this book, she is beginning that process. I think it's the hope at
I
the
would
end of
agree
the
with that.
book. Yeah, is that
Yeah.
she's beginning this process, that this is the growth pain that you have to go through, a sort of delayed adolescence.
Yeah, I mean, pain, virtues require pain to some extent. Athletic accomplishments require pain. If you want to be a good runner, you're going to run a lot of painful miles. If you're going, they require painful repetitions and uncomfortable things. The development of virtues is very similar. You have to go through painful experiences and difficult things in order to develop them. It's not an easy process. And I think I don't think that's what he's doing here, but I think that's just a universal truth that's going to come through in the novel.
Yeah, and it may speak to Sandeep, who has no kind of tolerance for pain, as
No,
far as we know. He is a person, he's appetite, right? He likes comfort, he likes women. We know he has had a number of affairs with women, which seems to be something somewhat out of the ordinary for the people in this community. And he really just he has no respect for self-sacrifice. Literally, he says, I have no respect for self-sacrifice. I think that is, that somehow, and his idea of nation is somehow this sort of this Uberman is the nation or makes the nation. It becomes a little odd how you connect his sensibility to nationalism. It seems to be like a postmodern nationalism, which those things often don't go together, and I'm not entirely sure they go together in this book, and that may be part of the problem as well. But yeah, it's an interesting book when you think of it in terms of the virtues, as you're saying, that this is something you have to suffer for. And a lot of these people don't want to suffer for it. They want to stand upon virtue. They don't want to take up virtue.
it's a very good way to phrase it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, movie. We got to the movie.
Movie. It's movie phone. Okay. So this
Why
is
don't you
one of
just tell me the name of the movie you want to
let's
see?
see. Oh, yeah. So this is Satyajit Ray, who was a Bengali film director. I'll give you a little background on him because I love him. He's, I don't know, top five film directors for me.
I don't think I've ever seen anything he directed before. What is he?
Uh, his most famous is the Apu trilogy from the mid to late 1950s,
Okay, I don't know.
which is
I should watch it after having watched this movie.
actually I think all of his movies are on Criterion.
Oh, well, then I'll give it a
So
shot.
yeah, they're the Apu trilogy is remarkable. There's obviously three of them, but they're his
Three trilogies or three? I'm kidding. That's
no
just obnoxious.
no, but
I'm
they're
just being obnoxious. I got it.
yeah, but they are the trilogy makes up three of his first, I think, five or six films. So you really see quite a change from the first movie to the last. And he actually did sell his wife's jewels to fund the first movie. So there's a little bit of commentary there. But he is from Bengali, from West Bengal. He is probably the most decorated film director in India's history. He's the only Indian to ever win a lifetime Oscar or have a foreign Oscar. He was born in 1921 to author Sukumar Rai, and he started studying in 1940 at the university that Tagore founded. And apparently, Tagore convinced the university to give him um, acceptance into the art program. And initially, he worked as a visual artist, as an illustrator for books, before apprenticing under Jean Renoir.
I can totally see that. Oh, under Renoir. Yeah, I can see
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, his two big influences were Renoir, who made a movie called The River in West Bengal,
Okay.
where wasn't called West Bengal then, it was Bengali. But he worked for him as kind of an advisor, and he was also visited England for a while, and there he saw The Bicycle Thieves, the Vittorio De Sica film from 46, I think, 47, and was hugely influenced by
Forgot
that.
about that movie. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, but if you see early early Rye films, they're really influenced by De Sica. They look a lot like that. I think they're actually better, but they're still kind of influenced by that. And in this film, he had started working on the script in the 1940s, but it was for a different director. It just never got off the ground. And eventually he had the opportunity. And so he cast his favorite actor, Sumatra Chatterjee, who played Sandeep, who is, I think, maybe top 10 or top 20 film actors. His range is
He's really
amazing.
good.
He's really good in this. And if
I
you
haven't
see
seen it yet,
him
but
in other things, like when you get a chance, see him in other things, he like disappears into his characters in a really interesting way. Like he doesn't look recognizable in this movie to another movie, and it has
mm.
nothing to do with a Olivier nose or something like that. It's
Olivier's prosthetics is
yeah.
always a bit goofy.
Yeah. Yeah, it has nothing to do with intense blackface. Um, but he also cast as the female lead Swatil Ika Chatterjee because he saw her in a stage production in 1983 and he just cast her right off that and this launched her career. She became a very
She's also
successful.
excellent.
She's also excellent. Yeah, he works a lot of times with first time film actors and he's very good at it. And during this picture, actually, Rai suffered several heart attacks, and that most of the film had to kind of be completed by his son.
Mm.
Um, I should also mention Victor Banerjee, who played the husband,
Who's
who
also excellent.
excellent. He's excellent in this. He's a really successful documentarian as well. That man. So he's a really good cast. The top three actors there, the three roles are pretty amazing.
It's a really impressive accomplishment.
Yeah.
Um, it's not a it's not a it's not a blockbuster, lots of bangs and shooting kind of movie, and it's not even like it's got a Chekhovian kind of quietness to it. And darn are they good. Like that's really hard to hold that kind of interest for that long. It's not even like a lot of explosive emotional like yelling scenes or anything. It's just like it is an understated and very powerfully acted film. It's great. It's really impressive.
I think it's one of the best movies to look at a kind of a political situation that I've ever seen.
I would agree.
Yeah,
Yeah, I well we'll get to it when we get to the end. Yes, I would
mhm,
agree.
yeah.
Absolutely.
And I would say that one thing too that was interesting was the adaptation. And there's adaptation choices Raya is making that are, I think, in a lot of ways, maybe more interesting than things in the book. I think Sandeep as first of all, having that actor play Sandeep, who's celebrity at that point and really beloved and really good looking guy, helps make his deception unexpected towards the end of it. He doesn't come off as he does in the book as somebody who you can trust, right? If you had no awareness of the book, potentially you could think, and I think with justification, that this is going to be the sexy political speaker who has who's drawn to this woman and they can't, but they want to and they can't, and he's perfectly noble. Rye doesn't tip his cards in the way that Tagore does, and letting you know how this man actually thinks.
Which I think is necessary for film. I'm not sure I would like that in the book. I think knowing it in the dramatic tension of the book, that is the tension in the book, is waiting for these people. It's a slower burn. It's not I'm not waiting to find out whether or not is this guy or is he or isn't he? I already know it. What I'm waiting for is basically yelling at the other characters going, "Get it together." Like that's the kind of pleasure of the book is the dramatic irony there. I don't think I would like that in the movie. I would just find that annoying for an hour. It wouldn't be a good build up. But for a book that because it's a slower burn, that tension works. In a film, I don't think it works. So that's smart. That's good
That's a smart
adaptation.
adaptation.
You know your media, change it. You cannot keep the same the thing that works in the novel don't work in the books or in the movies and vice versa. So change it if you have to. Keep what's there, but you need to adapt it to the material, to the medium, and that's what they do successfully. Well,
Yeah, because if he was a just a sleaze right from the start, you'd just be pulling your hair out. You
Yeah,
just, this guy's we're spending more time with this guy. In fact, you like spending time with him. I think part of it too is the book is entirely in first person. And
yeah.
so it's really hard to hide who Sandeep is when he is
When
speaking
he is
to you
telling you.
for about 50 pages
But you
of a,
still have to see through him because he's lying. Again,
to
I think he
himself. Yeah.
lies to himself an inordinate amount. And so you have to still see through it and wonder how much of what he's saying is true. Now, it is fairly obvious what's going on with him, but you still have to kind of wonder with the first person narrative. And the movie has the brilliant, I loved this little, it's just such a nice little script writing thing. Do you know what I'm going to say? The cigarette. The cigarettes are such a
Oh
good
yeah.
little touch
Mhm.
that his whole thing is he won't touch any foreign things. No sugar, no salt, no nothing. But he smokes foreign cigarettes. And they say, "Why do you smoke foreign cigarettes?" And he says, "Because the local ones are terrible." And so he actually, and you just go, that, I mean, it's the hypocrisy is so obvious that this man, he'll pay extra money because he has it, but to smoke bad cigarettes, that I just won't do. And he even says, which again I just love, that when he's talking to Bimala and he says, if you'll join, and she says to him, well, then why don't you just quit? Then you don't have to smoke the foreign cigarettes. You could just stop. And she says, don't you have any willpower? And he says, okay, I'll tell you what, if you join the movement, I will quit smoking the cigarettes. And he never does. He's the next scene, he's sitting there smoking the cigarettes, and it's just such a good little bit of script writing that, and it's just every single time you see him take out a cigarette, you kind of go, oh, he's lying. It's another little lie, and you just kind of watch it build and build and build and build, and he never does what he said he would do. And there's even a later scene where someone says, he offers a cigarette to someone, and someone says, "Oh, they're foreign cigarettes," and he goes, "It's the only exception I allow myself." And again, it's just like that's a great screenwriting, and he does it with such genuine honesty as an actor that it just he sells it so well, and it's such a great little that's how you write a good script. You just make those little moments in good dialogue where people talk at cross purposes and then they just lie, and you just leave it there you never reference it again, and you just leave it there for the rest of the movie. A bad script would have had her yelling at him in the last scene and being like, "You told me you would quit the cigarette." It's never mentioned. He just sits there the whole time smoking them, and so you the audience know it, and it never comes up again. I love that. Such good script writing, such good, just smart directing. Trust the audience, they got it, and it just follow it, and it's a brilliant little touch.
Yeah. Yeah,
I love that.
that's a really good point. Yeah. He's also all in the casting too, but yeah, that is an excellent touch. The political stuff is more explicit in this. They describe the movement, they describe a lot of the contradictions kind of head on. He just
Hmm.
sort of sits down with everyone and explains that, well, if you put a effectively if you put a tariff up, if you ban foreign goods, everything's going to get more expensive or lower in quality for the people, and that's going to be bad. So the politics of the movie are a little more on their face because they have to be. You're separated by this event by what, 6 or 7 decades. You
Yeah.
have to kind of remind everyone what the hell was going on. But I think that works fine. I didn't mind the
No, I
explicit,
didn't.
like, here's the
I
problem.
didn't find it awkwardly presented. I didn't find it a condescending history lesson. It's that is well woven into the narrative. It didn't need a title card. That's again a bad movie would have just stuck a title card up and been like, the Swadeshi movement sweeps India as the people. You'd be like, oh, for crying, just weave it into the narrative. You don't need to stick it on
Yeah.
a title card.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The Intergalactic Alliance and the
I was
Trade
gonna do.
Federation is just, it's like that would have been what this movie could have done, and it would have been
Mhm,
bad writing. And that's what the bad writer did when he had his opportunity, was he stuck the Trade Federation up on the screen.
mhm. Yeah. Another thing, I really like the presentation of Bimla. And there's one scene where she leaves her husband's house. Do you remember that they slow it down and they have a few edits together? We see the two of them walking down a hallway. And
Yeah,
that's the
yeah.
point where they're like leaving. And the movie takes it and frames it. And the impression I got with this film, even more than with the book, was well, there's this one scene where she leaves her house and they slow it down. It's pseudo slow motion. They have a few cuts of it, and it seems to frame the story as the movie as her story even more than the book. And it also ends with her grief. That's the movie ends with her grief, also kind of in a instead of slowing down, a sort of speed up where you see her changing her head garment, she's not changing it, but you see it change
Change, yeah.
over and over, and she's just weeping against a wall from after her husband had died, which is explicit in the movie. It's sort of you get
Strongly
the
implied in the,
implied
I
in the
mean, it's
book.
implied, yeah.
Yeah. And it's sort of like
I don't
this
think
is
you could read the ending and not think he'd
yeah, that
live.
he's gonna be
Yeah,
fine.
yeah,
Um,
I think he's yeah,
yeah, I think
he gonna die.
he's gonna die. Yeah. And so you end up having these two shots of um giving freedom and the consequence of that. That seems to be the, if you want to say what the story I am telling, if I was gonna say what the story I'm telling is a woman given her freedom, and at the end she sees the consequences of that, which in no way diminishes her or says she's some kind of succubus who brings about evil. She's actually quite a sweet character in this. The way she plays it is very sweet. She she blushes wonderfully with when Chatterjee is speaking with her, and even you see him from her perspective when he's singing. What Rai does when he sings, when Chatterjee sings to her, he just kind of sings a nationalist song for her. He does it twice. Is they can it? They have canned vocals going, and so you get this kind of sense. It's almost expressionistic the
Yeah,
moment
it's
of
yeah, I was thinking that it has this very out of body experience where she's what she hears is not the same as what is in the scene. And it's intentional, I'm sure. You know, that she's hearing this wonderful, it's like a radio, you know, there's this sense of it's an out of body experience, which again, that's a great you know, film can do something that the book can't, and it does it well. It's not gimmicky, it's well done.
And that's a lovely thing. Another change they make, which I think is also a smart one, is in the book he engages her for the 5,000 rupees. He says we need this.
Yeah.
In the movie,
She offers it. Yeah.
she offers it. She starts it up. And that's, I think, another adaptation choice on the part of Rai to direct attention to her, to make this more of her story, and to give her more agency within the freedom she's given. So she is igniting, she is initiating the biggest problem. She's initiating the tragedy. She's not simply participating in it. She's at its root in a big way. This isn't to take blame away from Sandeep, but I do like that change.
It collapses a few of it. I mean, it's also just a practical choice. I would agree. I think it is a focused choice. I think it's also just a practical choice. That section of the book does drag a little bit. It was the only part that I thought, oh my God, just move on. There was just a lot going back and forth about the 5,000 rupees and just who was going to steal it and how they were going to steal it and where they were going to get it and what they were going to do and what they were going to sell to get it and what they wouldn't sell to get it. You shouldn't do that. You should get it this way. I'm like, can we move on a little bit here? Like it definitely that was just the and I think it was necessary. I'm just not sure that was the best part of the book. And I think this was just like just collapse it and have her say it. Like it's just like we can that's essentially what happens in the end, but it just took 50 pages to get there. Let's just condense that all down and to its essential action, which is she'll just say she'll get it and she'll offer to get him money whenever he needs it. And then and I agree, it changes the focus away and puts it on her, which is a good thing. It's on her own choice, bad as it might be, but it's her own choice. The movie, it reminds me of like a Vermeer painting. Doesn't it kind of have that? It's like there's a lot of mirrors and a lot of just light, sort of like, you know, background light sources, and especially in these sort of nighttime interior scenes, it's a very well framed movie and a very well filmed movie too. In addition to being well acted and well written and just well paced, it's a very well framed movie.
There isn't a lot of superfluous cuts. He likes to keep the camera on the people for a
Yeah.
while, and he does use mirrors to do that in part. He does use mirrors to capture um, people at angles you otherwise wouldn't be able to see two people in a frame. it's a very kind of intimate. It's a very intimate movie, and it's it's really great. I can't believe it's one of the Rye films I haven't seen just because it is not listed amongst his best, and it's
It's pretty darn
it's
good.
pretty good. Yeah,
It's pretty good.
yeah. So
I should watch his other things if this is considered not his best. It's a great. This is the first thing we've done where both the book and the movie have been good. Um, it's also, I mean, it's we were saying that like, I mean, a number of these books have not been great. I find it interesting that the two best books have both been by people born in India. Like, there's something unusual about that, right? I mean, there is something
Mhm.
unusual that it's Kipling and Tagore coming from, I think there's something weird. It's just
There,
they
yeah,
seem to have looked when they looked outside. And again, the other reasonably good one is, I think I really like Sienkiewicz. And it seems when they look outside of the direct central northern European sphere, they actually did find some really quality things. And
yeah,
these are the two best writers, I would
mhm.
say, that we've
I
encountered.
suppose a lot of the problem is the Nobel Prize Committee is just looking at the Northern Europe, looking at Norway and Sweden there, like or France to a certain degree, and just
But when they branched out, they did find interesting stuff. That was when they were finding their best things. And while Phantom Carriage was an excellent movie, that particular book was sort of not the best book. I do like Selma Lagerlof. She's not, as we said, I wouldn't call that book canon, but that movie is baller. But this is the first time it's been like, wow, we got both. They are these are the both are really good.
did it.
They're
Yeah.
finally.
Yeah. So I would say in terms of canonical, kind of canonical, whatever this modern canon thing is, this is far closer to it.
This book should be in it. And because, as you said, it's the best, it's the best political book, in my opinion. And I don't particularly like political books. It's why I like 1984, I Can Take or Leave, or its message is a bit heavy-handed, but and it's not, it's sort of like I get it, I understand what you're saying. This is a much more valuable book and it's a much better book for people to read. This is it's the importance of being aware of a demagogue and of your own choices and how it's just there's so many layers to it. But I think as a political book and how home life informs politics in terms of how politics inform home life, wariness of demagoguery, understanding consequences of actions. This is a book that it really should be more read. This I would place it 100% in canon. People should read this book. Not only because it gives them perspectives on a particular issue and culture they might not know a little bit about, but because it has a lot to say to a Western canon. I think this is even if it's not written in Europe, this 100% should be read. This is just a book people should read. It's not only is it a great book, not only is it a great movie. This is a great piece of literature. I think it's important. This should be read.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's has what is at the heart of irony, which is dialectic,
Yeah.
right? It's the unclosable gap between different ideas or different perspectives or whatnot that kind of
Yep.
bounce off each other, but you can never put them back together. You can never sew them up completely. This book has that in spades, and I think it's the first book we've done that does. Sienkiewicz gave us a lot to talk about,
Yeah, but he's not.
but he's
He's
not
he's got
doing
his point. It's
this.
very
Yeah.
obvious. And even Kim, it's fairly obvious what he's saying. All of them have said, and this is maybe why it feels so modern. All of them sort of had their point. It was fairly obvious. There's not a lot of contradiction. There's not a lot of questioning. They are driving towards a point. This thing, I think it has a point, but it's not stateable in a moment. I could state the point of some of those other novels in a sentence or two. I could not do that with this. This thing it's a circle and it's a loop and it just kind of feeds around itself. It's depth. That's why I think it feels modern. It's not telling you what to think about it, but it is certainly offering you some really interesting problems to think about. And that's an engaging, good piece of modern literature. And this is great. It's just good. It's darn good.
You can rate and review this show anywhere fine podcasts are available. For those viewing in YouTube land, if you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the Talking Studios channel for all our exciting content, and follow us on social media at Talking Studios. Check out other shows by Talking Studios, including Talking Pictures Trivia, where we explore movies through trivia, Keep Making Movies, where we explore micro-budget films, Limited Lexicon, where we play through text-based adventure games, and Get the Point, where we slowly reveal a movie poster and try to guess which movie poster it is. Got a question for us? Call the Talking Studios hotline at 201-467-8679 and leave a message. It may be featured on a future episode. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to Adapt It, wherever fine podcasts are found. Join us next week when we discuss the 1915 Nobel Prize winner Roman Roland and his 10-volume book, Jean Christophe, from between 1904 and 1912, as well as the 1950 film Till We Meet Again. See you then.
Wow, Talking Studios.
Next week, we'll be releasing part 1 for the 1915 Nobel Prize winner Roman Roland and his 10-part novella series, Jean Christophe, published in French between 1904 and 1912. So next week, we'll be working through the first 4 novellas. Week after that, we will finish it up. But for the first novellas at least, Pat, who would you hire to direct this work?
And this is a real answer, and I don't think you'll be surprised, but I think I would get Francois Truffaut.
Oh,
I would get
okay.
Truffaut. I think, I mean, like, this seems like you need a good, solid French director, right? And I think, just on a total level, if you actually were to direct this thing and make it into a movie, and it would be a very long movie. But the first half, I would go with Truffaut. That would be
Yeah,
my preferred answer.
I got you there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Truffaut is like very whimsical. I think that would be interesting to see a little more whimsy put into this, but this
But
book actually kind of,
That's what I'm saying. This book
yeah,
has that sort of whimsy.
yeah,
Like it has a sense of humor to a
it,
certain extent.
yeah, I
And
think he
it
would pull it out. He would,
yeah,
or highlight it more. Mhm.
yeah. But it strikes me as like a Jules and Jim kind of book.
Yeah, it
Like
has that
it's
potential.
yeah, I think you could make this into a Jules and Jim kind of thing.
Okay. I went with Krzysztof Kieślowski, the Polish director. He's kind of
Where did you get some of these
oh,
names?
I actually have I'll show you. One second.
Is it a poster? No one can see it, Tom.
He did this 10-part movie called The Decalogue.
Oh, it's that dude.
It's that dude, yeah.
Oh, I know that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And and I
That's the
thought
Ten
of him.
Commandments one, right?
It's the Ten
Yeah,
Commandments
yeah,
one.
yeah.
Each movie is a different violation of a commandment. And it's incredibly long. It's in 10 parts. It at times can be
This
incredibly,
is a better pick. This is a
it
much
sounds
better pick.
incredibly self-serious. And just when you think you've finished, you realize you have 3 more movies to get through. And so I immediately, when reading this, thought of
All right, you're
Kieslowski.
right. You are right. If there is, granted, it's subjective, but you know what? My answer was wrong.
And this is something we'll get into next week. I think there's a lot more fun in this book than an initial read, especially when you're trying to read it all at once in a
Also, we have to
death
read it a
march.
second time in order in order to get the real subtleties.
Yeah. Well, we'll cover that next week, audience, when we cover the first 4 novellas. See you then.